Hi and welcome to Spooky Mystery. Who am I? Well, that's a secret for now. But stick around and maybe you'll uncover the truth. Here we delve into the spine-chilling, the supernatural, the haunted and the gruesome. From ghostly tales to reactions on paranormal investigations, we've got it all covered. Got a spooky story of your own? Drop it in the comments or shoot me an email. You never know, your tale might just be our next big feature. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. We're just getting started and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.
Rain pounded the windshield, blurring the already fading lines of the highway. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, her eyes burning with fatigue. She had been driving for what felt like an eternity, the endless asphalt ribbon unspooling before her like a cruel joke. Washington felt a lifetime away. California, a distant promise lost in the storm. The wipers screeched back and forth, a rhythmic counterpoint to the low rumble of the engine. Each mile marker that flickered past seemed to mock her, a testament to the vast distance still to be covered. Her shoulders ached, her vision blurred, and a wave of exhaustion threatened to pull her under. Sarah knew she needed to stop, needed to rest. But the thought of spending another night alone on the road filled her with a cold dread. A sign flickered through the deluge, a beacon in the gloom. "Welcome to Oakhaven. Next exit." Sarah hesitated, a strange reluctance tugging at her. The name itself seemed to whisper of secrets, of things best left undisturbed. But fatigue was a powerful persuader, and the promise of a warm bed, however fleeting, proved too tempting to resist. With a sigh of resignation, Sarah flicked the indicator and steered her weary car towards the off-ramp. As she descended into the town, the rain seemed to intensify, as if Oakhaven itself was trying to repel her. The air grew heavy, charged with a strange electricity that sent shivers down her spine. The streetlights cast an eerie yellow glow, illuminating the deserted streets and the darkened windows of the buildings. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. This town felt different, wrong somehow, but it was too late to turn back now. The Oakhaven Inn loomed before her, a tall, gaunt structure that seemed to sag under the weight of its own history. The paint peeled from its walls like scabs, and the neon sign above the door flickered erratically, casting dancing shadows across the deserted street. It wasn't inviting, but it was shelter. Sarah pushed open the heavy oak door, the hinges groaning in protest, as if disturbed after a long slumber. The air inside was thick with the smell of dust and damp, and a musty silence hung heavy in the air. Behind the reception desk, a man sat slumped in a chair, his face obscured by a newspaper. He didn't look up as Sarah approached, his presence as welcoming as a tombstone. "I need a room," Sarah said, her voice echoing strangely in the stillness. The man grunted, lowering the paper slightly to reveal a pair of cold, lifeless eyes. He didn't speak, just pushed a registration form and a key across the counter. Room 310. The number seemed to hang in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. As Sarah made her way up the creaking staircase, her unease grew with each step. The flickering lights cast grotesque shadows on the walls, and the silence was broken only by the sound of her own breathing. Each room she passed seemed to exude a palpable sense of emptiness, of lives lived and lost within these aging walls. By the time she reached the third floor, her heart was pounding in her chest, a drumbeat of fear against her ribs. The hallway stretched before her, a tunnel of shadows and dust. The air was thick and oppressive, and a strange metallic tang lingered in her nostrils. Sarah counted each step as she made her way towards room 310, each footfall echoing in the silence. 98, 99, 100. Each step seemed to take her further from the familiar world, deeper into the heart of the hotel's unsettling embrace. She stopped outside room 310, the key feeling cold and heavy in her hand. The air around the door seemed to vibrate with an unseen energy, and a wave of dizziness washed over her. For a moment, she considered turning back, seeking refuge in the relative safety of her car. But the exhaustion was a powerful force, urging her to seek solace, however temporary. Taking a deep breath, Sarah slid the key into the lock. The mechanism turned with a grating click, and the door swung open with a low groan, as if releasing a held breath. The air inside was stifling, thick with the smell of dust and decay. The curtains were drawn, plunging the room into an unnatural twilight, and the only light came from a single flickering lamp on the bedside table. Sarah stepped inside, her skin prickling with unease. The air felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy that seemed to press down on her. It was as if she had stepped into a tomb, sealed off from the outside world and forgotten by time. The heat hit her first, a suffocating wave that seemed to radiate from the very walls themselves. It was an unnatural heat, dry and oppressive, like being trapped inside a furnace. Sarah tried to ignore it, tried to rationalize it away as faulty heating or poor ventilation. But deep down, a primal fear stirred within her. This heat was different. It felt malevolent. She moved towards the window, intending to throw it open and let in the cool night air. But as she reached for the latch, a wave of dizziness washed over her, so intense that she had to grip the windowsill for support. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Panic welled up inside her, threatening to overwhelm her. Turning away from the window, Sarah stumbled towards the bed, her legs feeling weak and unsteady. She sank down on the edge of the mattress, her body trembling uncontrollably. The heat seemed to intensify, pressing down on her, suffocating her. It was as if something was trying to force its way inside her, to merge with her, to consume her. Fear, raw and primal, coursed through her veins. She had never felt anything like it before, this sense of utter dread, of being in the presence of something evil. She wanted to scream, to run, to escape the suffocating confines of the room. But a strange lethargy had settled over her, pinning her to the bed as if an invisible weight held her captive. Section 5. An overwhelming urge to fly. A new sensation washed over her, insidious and terrifying. It whispered to her from the shadows, a seductive voice that promised oblivion. It urged her towards the window, promising release, urging her to fly. She knew she shouldn't listen, knew it was madness. But the voice was relentless, its whispers weaving their way into her thoughts, her desires. She rose from the bed, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, as if controlled by an unseen force. Her feet moved towards the window, drawn by an irresistible pull. The voice grew stronger, urging her on, promising peace, promising an end to the fear. Just one step, it whispered. One small step, and then you can fly. Her hand reached out, drawn to the open window like a moth to a flame. The cool night air beckoned, promising escape from the stifling heat of the room. She could feel the pull of the open air, the allure of the void. For a terrifying moment, she felt herself giving in, felt the last vestiges of her resistance crumbling. Then, a wave of nausea washed over her, so intense it brought her to her knees. The voice in her head screamed in frustration as she pulled back from the precipice, her body racked with tremors. She had looked into the abyss, had felt its cold embrace, and it had terrified her back to her senses. Section 6. Panic in the lobby. Whispers in the night. Scrambling back from the window as if burned, Sarah stumbled towards the door, her escape fueled by pure primal terror. She fumbled with the lock, her fingers clumsy and uncoordinated, her mind a jumble of fear and confusion. The doorknob felt cold and slick beneath her trembling hand, as if coated in ice. Finally, the lock yielded, and she practically fell out into the hallway, the cool night air a blessed relief from the stifling heat of the room. She didn't look back, didn't dare to see if anything followed. She simply ran, her bare feet slapping against the threadbare carpet, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Down the seemingly endless hallway she fled, her fear lending speed to her flight. The flickering lights cast grotesque shadows that danced and writhed on the walls, and the silence was broken only by the frantic pounding of her own heart. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away from that room, from that hotel, from that town. She burst into the lobby, her chest heaving, her eyes wide with terror. The man behind the desk looked up, his expression a mixture of annoyance and something else, something cold and calculating that sent a fresh wave of fear coursing through her. She didn't stop to explain, didn't even look back. She simply ran out into the night, the heavy oak door slamming shut behind her, the sound echoing like a death knell in the stillness. Section 7. A town held captive to its secrets. The storm had passed, leaving behind a night of oppressive stillness. The air was thick and heavy, pregnant with the scent of wet earth and something else, something indefinable and unsettling. Sarah ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed for mercy. The image of that room, of that heat, seared into her mind. She didn't know where she was going, didn't even care. She just needed to get away from the Oakhaven Inn, from the suffocating presence that clung to its walls like mildew. As she ran, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that unseen eyes followed her every move. She slowed to a walk, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The town was eerily silent, the streets deserted, the buildings dark and forbidding. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, as if afraid to disturb whatever secrets lurked in the shadows. Reaching a park shrouded in darkness, Sarah collapsed onto a bench, her body racked with sobs. She didn't know how long she sat there, lost in her terror and confusion. The events of the last few hours replayed in her mind, a nightmarish kaleidoscope of heat, fear, and that overwhelming urge to jump. She knew she wouldn't be able to sleep, not after tonight, not after room 310. Section 8. The Librarian's Reluctant Gaze. As dawn broke, casting a pale light over the sleeping town, Sarah made her way towards the only sign of life she could find, the Oakhaven Public Library. The building itself was small and unassuming, a stark contrast to the looming presence of the inn. Stepping inside, she was greeted by the comforting scent of old books and the gentle hum of silence. Behind the counter sat an elderly woman, her face etched with the passage of time, her eyes filled with a wisdom that spoke of long years spent among the written word. She looked up as Sarah approached, her gaze sharp and appraising. Sarah hesitated, unsure how to begin, how to explain the terror that still clung to her like a shroud. I need information, Sarah stammered, her voice hoarse from disuse. The librarian raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. About the Oakhaven Inn, specifically about room 310. The librarian's demeanour shifted subtly, a flicker of something akin to fear crossing her features. She hesitated, her gaze darting to the door as if contemplating asking Sarah to leave. Then, with a resigned sigh, she gestured for Sarah to follow her, leading the way into the labyrinthine stacks of the library. Section 9. A murder. Most foul. A mystery unsolved. The librarian led her to a secluded corner, the air thick with the smell of aged paper and forgotten stories. With a knowing glance, she pulled out a dusty volume, its leather cover cracked and faded, the title barely visible. Oakhaven. A History in Shadows. Sarah's hand trembled as she took the book, her heart pounding in her chest. The librarian pointed to a chapter titled simply Tragedy at the Inn. As Sarah began to read, the blood drained from her face, her breath catching in her throat. The words swam before her eyes, painting a horrifying picture of a night long ago. A young woman, travelling alone, had checked into the Oakhaven Inn. She had been given room 310. Later that night, her screams had echoed through the hallways. The other guests found her body in the room, her eyes wide with terror, her face contorted in a silent scream. The window was open, and it appeared she had jumped. But something about the scene didn't sit right with the authorities. The woman had been terrified. Her body contorted in a way that suggested something more sinister than a simple suicide. The investigation had been long and arduous, but no other suspects were ever found. The case went cold, the mystery unsolved. Over time, the whispers started, whispers of a presence in room 310, of unnatural heat, of an overwhelming urge to jump. The whispers spoke of a haunting, of a restless spirit seeking retribution. Section 10. The Haunting of Room 310. Sarah closed the book, her hand trembling, her mind reeling. The story confirmed her darkest fears, validated the terror she had experienced in that room. It wasn't her imagination, wasn't just stress or exhaustion. Something dark and evil resided within the walls of room 310. Something that fed on fear, that whispered to the vulnerable, that urged them towards oblivion. She looked up at the librarian, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and understanding. The librarian simply nodded, her expression a grim reflection of the story Sarah had just read. There were no words that could adequately express the horror they both now shared. No comforting platitudes that could erase the truth. Leaving the library, Sarah took one last look at the Oakhaven Inn, its silhouette stark against the rising sun. It stood there, a silent sentinel, a testament to the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary-seeming places. She knew she would never forget her night in room 310, would forever be haunted by the memory of that suffocating heat, that insidious voice, that overwhelming urge to fly. As she drove away from Oakhaven, the town shrinking in her rearview mirror, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was leaving a part of herself behind. A part of her would forever be tethered to that room, to the mystery of the murdered woman, to the chilling truth of the haunting of room 310. And she knew that the whispers would continue, passed from traveller to traveller, a chilling reminder that some doors are best left unopened, some secrets best left undisturbed.
Thank you for watching. Sleep tight if you can.